Year 6 and welcome to our last lesson about writing our leaflet. So today we're going to focus on writing a great conclusion. Okay, so there's our learning question. I'm going to read it one last time today. So what role did scientists of the past play in our understanding of the world today? That's what our leaflet, that is the question that our leaflet is going to answer using all the information we've learned in our learning journey so far. So today's task, you're going to finish your remaining middle paragraphs about the different scientists we've looked at, and you're going to pull the whole leaflet together with an effective conclusion. And that's actually what an effective conclusion does. Okay, it draws it all together to one point. So if you'd like to think maybe an introduction would start as a triangle with the smallest part of the triangle at the top, so you start with a little bit of information to go into more detail. The conclusion would be the opposite of that. It would be like an upside down triangle. You start with a lot of information and then you pull it together to one point to leave your reader with one final thought at the end of it. Okay, we looked at this yesterday. I'm not going to go over this again, but just to highlight the fact that the I space adverbials that I've given you in your home learning document could be used to help cohesion, to keep your whole leaflet linked together, and it can also help with your varying clause structures, as can that other information I put in yesterday's learning document. And then the grammar we did today about relative clauses will also help with our success criteria. So please make sure you're bearing all that information in mind while you're writing. Okay, how to write a conclusion. So to write a concluding paragraph, you need to summarise everything you've written about in your leaflet. Go over it again, not in very much detail, but just hit on the points again. That kind of reiterates it to the reader and helps them remember and kind of internalise what you've been telling them. You need to think about the main points that you want to get across and be sure it's included. So have a little think, what did I want to achieve by this? What are those main things I want to get across? You might want to jot them down on a scrap piece of paper and then make sure that you get them into your conclusion. If you've already written a fabulous introductory paragraph, which I know some of you have because I've read them, then you could kind of write something similar with different wording. Or a great way to use the passive voice, you could write the same thing but just change it into the passive construction, so it doesn't sound like a complete repetition of something you've written before. Okay, here are some points to remember. So use your introductory paragraph as a guide. You may have started that by saying, for example, there are many scientists from history that made fantastic and interesting discoveries. You can then start your conclusion by saying, Jenner, Lister and Fleming all made vital breakthroughs in the field of microbiology. So you're kind of talking about the same thing, but you're rewording it. That's a great kind of tool to use for cohesion, because you're talking about the same thing at the beginning of your document and at the end of your document, so it's pulling it all together, it's linking it together. Okay, you might also want to think about a good place to start is by looking at what each paragraph was about. So go back over what you've written already, look at your middle paragraphs you wrote yesterday and then the ones you've written today. And then, for example, you might have written about different scientists. So in your conclusion, you could briefly mention each scientist again, very briefly, for example, and in a different way. So, for example, Darwin could not have made, that doesn't make sense. Darwin could not have written his book, The Origin of the Species, without the information gained from scientists before him. So you might want to mention Mary Anning there, for example. So, to recap, make sure you have gone some way to answering the title of the leaflet. Okay, so look back at the question at the top in red and make sure you have kind of answered that. Leave your readers with something to think about. This is a really good, would be a really good aspect of an effective conclusion. That's what you really want to do. You want to leave them with a thought, leave them lingering with what they've just read. So, for example, suggest that they could learn more about the subject by saying something like, Charles Darwin studied lots of organisms on his voyage on the HMS Beagle. Perhaps you could find out more about them at www.nationalgeographic.com or you could think of something better than I've thought of. You could also give your readers something to do after reading your leaflet. For example, why not have a go at a yeast or natural selection investigation to feel what it's like to make important discoveries? Okay, give them with something to do, an action to do. Okay, so to recap again, remember it's important to wrap up your writing. That means bring it to a conclusion, bring it to a final point by summarising the main ideas for your reader. This brings your writing to a smooth close. Don't forget to refer back to all of the learning and research that you've made about each scientist back in your learning journey along the way over the last few weeks, and then make your leaflet as technically accurate as possible, as well as engaging. A conclusion is what you will leave with your reader. It wraps up your leaflet. It demonstrates to the reader that you accomplish what you set out to do, i.e. answering that question. It shows you have answered the title question. It provides the reader with a sense of closure on the topic. They feel satisfied that they know a lot about it and they've learned something. And also, whereas the introduction begins general and ends specific, make sure that your conclusion begins specific and moves to the more general. Okay, so again, going back to that inverted triangle I was talking about at the beginning. Okay, we talked about this yesterday, but just to recap, as you're writing today, in your head or out loud, rehearse each sentence carefully before you write it down. Once you've written it, repeatedly reread back over what you've written, editing and adding it to it as you go. This will make writing up the final leaflet so much easier tomorrow. Okay, Year 6, thank you. I might speak to you tomorrow, or I might just give you a picture of an example leaflet. I'm not decided yet, but I'll speak to you tomorrow in maths anyway. Thank you.